How's it going? So we're back today, and today I'm going to be talking about part 2 on getting prepared for an economic collapse. Now, is an economic collapse guaranteed? No, but more and more signs are slowly indicating that we are heading for an economic collapse. Both numbers in the stock markets, hitting all-time highs regularly. Now, is that out of the normal? No, but it is unusual the amount that it is happening. The amount of inflation, the amount of bloating in the stock market, how much stocks are worth. And a lot of these signs, many people are supporting that we are slowly heading toward an economic collapse. Now, what we're going to talk about today is 2 things you can do today to get more prepared and just feel a little more confident, not feel quite as, on edge or, quite as much anxiety about the whole thing. And the number one thing that you can do in general is just get more prepared. Does that mean you need to go out tomorrow, build a bunker, have 3 years of food and water stored, or, become Joe the Doomsday Prepper? No, hell no. No, you don't need to do all that. Most of us, that probably watch me, or anyone that's watching me, you're probably not doing all that well financially. I know I'm not. So just having maybe a little more food on hand. Maybe you have 2 days of food on hand right now. Maybe you try to go out and just get, 3 to 4 days worth of food. Maybe try to aim for a week each paycheck. Next paycheck, maybe try to get 2 weeks worth. Worth of canned goods, just rice. Like rice, beans, have some stuff on hand. Then the other thing you can do too is have a car kit on hand at all times, where maybe if you get a flat on the side of the road, you have some jumper cables or a jump box in your car. All these things you should have in your car. And I keep saying it, I'm going to make a car kit at some point. It's been really cold. Quite frankly, I just haven't felt like it, and taking all the tools out of my car and organizing them. I just did a toolbox tour yesterday at my storage unit, or one of my toolboxes. I'd like to do a part 2 on the other toolboxes and what I keep in my car right now, which will change. I have a ton of stuff in there that probably doesn't need to be in there. Right now, I could probably tear apart half an engine with what I've got in my car, and I don't need to have that much in my car. But just get more prepared. Be more prepared on average. The next thing, it kind of goes along with this, is learn to be more self-sufficient. That means that if you keep a plug kit in your car, know how to use it. Watch a couple of YouTube videos from different people on how to plug tires. Here's on the side of the road. Maybe watch a couple of videos on what to keep in your car and how to use those items. Maybe if your car needs a little bit of work, start trying to do a little bit of your own car work. Does that mean you need to be, Tim the mechanic or Tim the plumber? No, but knowing how to maybe work on your car or work on your house, or do a lot of that work by yourself, or do a lot of that work on your own time without maybe having to call the guy all the time. Well, maybe I don't want to do those things. Well, that's too bad, okay? Because we are very quickly becoming a society that is very much struggling to find people in the trades. We're struggling to get people in the trades. We're struggling to even get work done. Work costs a fortune nowadays to get anything done professionally. I'll call a plumber to unclog a drain. You might be looking at $200 for a mechanic to do a set of brakes on your car, which is not that complicated. Well, it is to do them right, but for most people to kind of get you by, it's not that complicated to do brakes or do an oil change. Oil changes can be like $60 to $80 nowadays. Just being able to do a lot of that stuff, and even also just knowing what you're talking about, just know the basics on a car. If the mechanic's talking to you about something and you're just kind of, your eyes are just rolling in the back of your head, as a professional mechanic, we've all seen the look, right? If any mechanics are watching this, you know what I'm talking about. You've seen the look where the customer's eyes, you're trying to explain something a little more complicated to him, and it's just kind of his eyes just kind of glaze over, like, right there you lost him. It usually happens around the time when you start saying the price of what it's all going to cost, and you're sitting there like, yeah, I mean, like, I'm not making $150 per hour. I'm only making like $25 an hour on the whole job. The shop is making $125. But of course he's looking at you like, why the fuck are you making $150 an hour? But just as the average person, become a little more self-sufficient. Learn how to fix like basic repairs around your house. If you don't know something, YouTube is an amazing source. Maybe try to put together a general toolkit just to have. Just basic tools, hammers, screwdrivers. You don't need a ton of professional grade tools either. Most of Home Depot tools will get the job done just trying to fix basic stuff around your house. Maybe you learn how to do some basic plumbing around your house. I say that as be careful. One small little leak because you didn't do something right could cost you thousands of dollars. So I'm not telling you to go fix anything around your house without a professional. Okay, but learn how to maybe do some basic stuff around your house. Maybe you're good with electrical. Maybe you're interested in that. Maybe watch a bunch of videos on electrical repair. Be careful because you could obviously electrocute yourself. I'm not telling you to go screw with electrical stuff without knowing what you're doing. But just become, a little more self-sufficient, a little more knowledgeable about basic stuff. My 50-year-old aunt didn't even know how to put air in her tire. What? Like, if you're in your 30s or 40s, you should know the basics on how to do an oil change. You should know the basics on maybe how to start a basic fire, right? You should know the basics on this stuff. Maybe I had to change out a faucet, or pull the back off of your toilet and just kind of figure out how it works. You should know the basics on stuff. You shouldn't just kind of go through life and not understand how things work, because we're getting more and more in an age where getting things done are going to be more expensive, harder to get someone to come out, which goes along with being more expensive. And we're kind of in an era where tools, while expensive to get a decent one, you can get a basic tool set for not that much money. We're kind of in a renaissance of tools where even the okay tools at Home Depot are kind of on the level that they were 100, 200 years ago. I know that sounds crazy to a lot of people, but we're kind of in an era where we can get good tools that'll get the job done for not that much money, and we have resources like YouTube and the internet that we can learn how to do a lot of stuff. Now, don't just find one guy, right? Don't just find one guy that you think knows it all. Use multiple resources. Learn from multiple different YouTubers, because I find that you might learn tips and tricks from multiple people, but you also might find that, hey, maybe that first video I watched, that dude was a friggin' idiot. He didn't know what he was doing. Okay, and then you watch the other 3, videos, and you're like, whoa, that guy was doing some sketchy shit. You kind of start to learn like a bit more of the nuance and stuff. And also, the more you learn about becoming more self-sufficient, the more it all kind of blends together, and you become a lot better at just understanding more, right? You have more understanding of stuff, and you can your bullshit level starts getting higher and higher, where you can understand more about, nah, that doesn't sound quite right, or nah, I don't think that's right. I'm gonna get a second opinion, or I'm gonna watch a second video, or it's like, hey, maybe this guy's fucking me over, maybe this guy's screwing me. Like when the mechanic tries to sell you exhaust bearings. If any of you thought that was a real thing, y'all need to start learning now. And if your mechanic tried to sell you blinker fluid and you paid for that shit, well, you're an idiot. But seriously, you are the number one person that is responsible for what you buy or what you pay for or not knowing something. I know it sucks. Yeah. If someone's trying to screw you over, they're a scumbag. But you're also responsible for not knowing the difference. So, just become more generally prepared and just start learning as much as you can, as quickly as you can. Because whether we like it or not, we are very quickly coming to an age where we might not have any choice but to be more self-reliant. Because we just can't get the work done. Or maybe that person can't get parts. Or whatever. And again, it'll make you more likely to be useful in a situation. You know how many people out here that if in a survival situation would be absolutely worthless? I've gotten to a point in my life where there's really not much I can't look at and fix. And that kind of also goes with the saying, yeah, you can fuck it up. You can fuck everything up and then still have to call the guy. Maybe it cost you a bunch of money, but you know what? You learned a few things. You can't never say that you fucked up and didn't learn nothing. But you could also save yourself a ton of money by fixing yourself. Yeah, you can fuck things up, but you can also fix things. Point is don't worry about what could happen and just try. The best thing you can do is just try. That also comes with too is like, hey, you might not be able to get clothes. You might have to learn how to fix basic tears or basic clothing repair. You might have to learn how to, hey, that door's squeaking. How can I fix that? Maybe watch a couple YouTube videos on what you can do to fix that basic door squeak. Maybe that door isn't quite lined up. Maybe you have an interior door that needs to be replaced or an exterior door that needs to be replaced. Try to do that yourself. Go get a couple of pry bars, a couple of hammers. Sure. See if that's something you can do yourself. A caulking gun for setting the door down on the pad. I have a door that I need to install my mother's. Maybe I'll turn that into a YouTube video. I can't guarantee that because she might be right there and I don't really want to put her in a YouTube video, but just learn how to do some stuff yourself. That doesn't mean you need to become, master mechanic Mike or, Joe Blow the plumber or, little Timmy the electrician. But if you can at least do the basics on knowing, kind of what the process is, you don't even have to do it. But being able to, if you had to do it yourself, you had to repair something yourself, at least you have that option. It's the guys that don't have the option that are usually the most screwed and the most reliant on the system. Because the system might not always be there. And if you're relying on the system, well, more often than not, you're probably going to be a victim. When anything in the world happens, you're just going to be a victim of circumstance. I'm rarely a victim of circumstance because I at least know what I'm doing and I can fix most stuff myself. It's very rare I come up against a problem that I can't fix myself. It's usually, if I'm having trouble fixing it, it's probably because it's an electrical problem on a car. And I don't have access to All Data or Mitchell or any of those systems to really diagnose it. And I also don't have an oscilloscope to really back probe into sensors and do sensor testing. Neither do most guys, and that's kind of way more than most guys can do. But you don't need to do any of that. Just knowing how to maybe change some suspension parts, knowing where all the fluids go, how to change them if you need to. Just know the basic maintenance on your car. Know the basic maintenance items on your house. Or, if you have basic maintenance items on any of your appliances. Maybe know how your appliances work. There's some good YouTube videos of guys fixing appliances. And they're shockingly not that complicated. And you know what it can do? doing this can save you money. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm broke. Like, I'm broke, bro. I'm eating, I've literally got a pack of ramen and a peanut butter sandwich every day for the next 2 weeks until I get past my car payment. Man, like, I'm broke. And it's my fault. You know, I had a couple of financial things that came up. Fuck's your problem? But food for thought. Have a good day, guys.